Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my review of this knife, and this is the Vosteed Mini Labrador. So this is a new smaller version of the Labrador from Vosteed, and I got to do a review of the Labrador and I enjoyed it. It was a knife that I thought had a nice design. It was pretty big and slender, had multiple opening methods. So when Vosteed initially asked me if I was interested in reviewing this knife, I was a little hesitant at first because one, it only has the one opening method, the back flipper, and two, it is a small knife, much smaller than I typically carry in my modern knives. But like has been happening a good bit, I'd say, recently, I seem to have maybe been kind of converted, or my eyes opened to a smaller knife. And certainly, there's a lot of knives that I have really enjoyed and really do enjoy that only have one opening method. So that's not really a huge deal. It's just that a lot of Vosteed's knives, and in particular the Labrador, have multiple opening methods. But I got this knife and I was really impressed by how well they translated the design to such a smaller knife. So first of all, I think that it just looks good. Like, I think if you saw this, not being held by a person's hands, you wouldn't really know that it's a very small knife. It's definitely, well translated to a small design, to a small size, without really changing the design too much or making it look like a tiny miniature knife. It's just like, it looks like a full normal size knife, but it's just small. But whilst having that, it actually is really ergonomic for its size. That's one thing. I've got pretty wide hands, short fingers, what you might call sausage fingers, and a lot of smaller knives just, are kind of hard for me to handle. I don't get a good grip on, or my fingers hang off the handle a lot. This knife is really ergonomic for me. It's really easy to hold, and I think it's because they've really smoothed out this handle. So, I often say that a simple handle makes for an ergonomic handle, and this is a pretty simple handle. You can see it's got a little bit of a kind of cutout for your index finger there, but then just a nice gentle palm swell and no hard corners here at the edge. That's always a good call because, for me, I get a 3-finger grip on this. My pinky finger actually completely hangs off the edge, so you don't really have to worry about it sticking into that corner. But even if it did, because that corner is pretty rounded, it's not going to be a huge deal. But this knife is ergonomic to use. I was really impressed by it. I carried and used this knife a good bit, and it really just feels like you can use this knife. Honestly, and the more common in actual use, I would say pinch grip like this, it feels really good because my pinky can kind of hold on to this area, middle finger, and that kind of indent, and then pinching, and you can get a really good grip on it. So I was really impressed by the kind of downsizing of the design that they did and keeping it still really ergonomic. Now, speaking of the handle, this is a titanium handle. Now, mine is the blacked out coated version with a nice kind of even black coating. There's a little bit of wear along the bevels just from me carrying and using it, but you also can get this in a plain, uncoated blade and uncoated titanium, which I think also looks really good. In fact, I think I probably would prefer that one just because it gives you a nice simple look, but the black is really well done. But this is a titanium handle, so you're getting a titanium frame lock, a real titanium frame lock here, and it's really well done. It's nicely machined. It's got a great action. You can see it's drop closed and very smooth. And speaking of which, it's well centered, maybe slightly off to this side here, but well centered and very smooth to open. You can see easy to flip, even being a really small knife. I don't have any trouble with this knife of putting weight, or pressure I guess I should say, into the lock bar, which I have sometimes on smaller knives. It just hasn't happened for me. I don't think it ever happened that I put pressure into that lock bar and had trouble flipping it. It just flips really nicely, really smooth. I've been impressed by Vosteed's knives. I think that they do a good job. Now, the Raccoon had a lock slip issue, but I believe that they fixed that. So I have been impressed by their quality, and this knife locks up well. It does lock up pretty far across the tang there, but no forward and back play, no side to side play. even when unlocked, and as you can probably guess from the smoothness, it is on bearings. So a very smooth knife, locks up well, pretty well centered, not perfect, but then the blade is a really classic drop point. You know, it's just a really classic looking drop point blade. You get some straight edge, a good belly, and then a very usable tip. Now, I use this knife a good bit, like I said, and it probably could use a sharpening. You might be able to see some of the dullness there. But it is a 14C28N blade, which is a pretty good, you know, upper low end steel, kind of mid-range steel. Definitely a good budget steel for a knife of this price, and common to see on good knives of this price, like Civivi and things like that. And speaking of which, when I looked this knife up, I was actually really surprised by the price. I was expecting this to be in the like $75 to $100 range, something like that, like a lot of, you know, Civivi knives are, and especially being that it's a titanium frame lock. It's a full titanium frame lock. It has a milled titanium pocket clip. You know, just wouldn't have been surprised to see it in that range. But the normal price of this is $69, but they actually have a sale going on right now that it's under $60. So I think that that's a good price. If you want a small knife like this, I don't think you're gonna go wrong for, you know, under $60, 14C28N steel and a titanium frame lock. I think that's a pretty good deal. Now, speaking of the size, like I said, it's very small, and it is a 2.73 inch blade. So from a lot of places that do have a blade length law, which thankfully I don't have to deal with, but 3 inches is a common, you know, law. Now, some places it's 2.5 inches, and so this will be a little bit big for that, but a lot of places it's 3 inches, and you do get the pretty much the full 3 inches of actual usable blade, as you can see there. I found that it really actually did most of what I needed to. I cut, you know, food and stuff with it, normal opening boxes, cutting tape and opening mail and stuff like that. And I think for most people, 2.73 inches is gonna, you know, do what you need to do with a knife. Of course, I do carry larger knives than this often. I'll show you kind of a fun size comparison between this and the Spyderco Military 2. So you can see there's a pretty significant size difference there. Here's another fun one with the Cold Steel 4MAX Scout. Definitely a size difference there. But compared to some more kind of EDC oriented knives, like maybe speaking of Civivi Elementum, an EDC classic, you can see that the Mini Labrador is not too much smaller. It's very similar in size and definitely similar in blade length. A little bit shorter blade, or edge length I should say, but pretty similar. You know, you're getting a similar amount of edge. Now here's another one that I wanted to show a comparison to, and I'll kind of talk about more about why later, but you can see that the handle of a Victorinox Bantam, I believe. Yeah, Bantam. This is a really great EDC knife, and you can see that the handle's a really similar size. You know, you get more edge out of the Vosteed. And speaking of that, one kind of interesting idea for carrying this knife that I have actually used is in an Altoids can. So, you know, sometimes people do little EDC kits in an Altoids can. I haven't cleaned this one out, but this knife actually fits in an Altoids can. So you can get a full-on, you know, titanium frame lock in an Altoids can. I actually don't know what I did with it. I have it right here, actually. You can also fit some really kind of good EDC gear into an Altoids can. So it makes for kind of a cool little, you know, option of how to carry your gear if you want to be pretty inconspicuous, don't want to use the clip. You could even take the clip off and throw yourself a Manker EO22 in here. This is a great EDC flashlight. You're gonna take the clip off of that. You got yourself a good, you know, knife and flashlight in here. You can easily fit a pocket pen. I actually had one in here, dropped it and can't get it out of my drawer. But you can definitely fit that, or a Fisher Space Pen in here. You know, you can fit one of these little Right in the Rain wallet notebooks, and you got yourself a full-on EDC, you know, a genuine Not like a kind of, you know, I have it, but it's not really going to work. You've got yourself a knife that you can really use, a flashlight that you can really use, a pen that you can really use, and, you know, really get pretty much anything you actually need to done. So I'm really impressed by that. I think that that's a really interesting kind of, you know, one of the ways that you could carry this knife and have it kind of like as a backup, maybe a backup to your backup, and, you know, have it there always when you need it, and have yourself a nice, well-made little knife available to you when you need it. So I have really enjoyed getting to check out this knife. Like I say, it's different than what I normally carry. Am I going to carry this as my main EDC knife? No, probably not. But I think a lot of people will, because a lot of people do want a smaller knife, whereas I tend to want a larger modern knife. But I do think that it is a good size for an EDC knife. It's very well made, and the design is well translated to this smaller size. So I want to thank Vosteed for sending this knife for review. I always really enjoy getting to check out their knives. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Leave any comments below where I have a link to where you can get this knife. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.